Everything starts from awareness.
Good leadership is simply catalyst.
Focus on the reason and you'll find inspiration in anything.
This impact continues to grow.
Conversation about intentionality.
If you change nothing, nothing will change.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Project Spiral, the filmed edition. I'm Tim.
And I'm Abigail, and we have faces.
We do have faces. We just got them today.
I know, we've just been disembodied voices for a very long time, and
Yeah.
after 5 years of doing the podcast gods, we're going to grant you with faces. And
Yeah, I mean it's been an interesting time in the void talking with real people. It's a little hard sometimes with Wi-Fi connection and other aspects as we float through and finding the right mic equipment, and we often like float through the mic and we're like, oh wait, we don't have dimensions yet, and then we just decided it was time to have a body.
Yep.
And here we are.
And
Yep.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So I thought actually I wanted to celebrate this first day of video with wearing this new t-shirt that I wanted to show off.
Woo! Trat attack. Bring it on.
So in case
That's what the shirt says, by the way.
Yes, if you're listening, that's what the shirt says. Trat Attack is one of my favorite bands. It's an Estonian band. It's amazing. And my dearest, darlingest brother got me this shirt for Christmas.
Your dearing, darlingest brother. I've never been called darlingest.
No,
now I have.
I was talking about my other brother.
Your other brother, who's still in the void. May you rest in peace.
He's still in the void. We left him there.
Yeah. He tried to get a body, but I was just like, no, Pieter, stay. And Pieter stayed.
His name is Pieter, like
Pieter. Like,
is it
like the Ukrainian Peter? How do you pronounce it?
Peter.
Peter? Oh, it's just Peter? I don't know. It's like spelled Peter. Anyways.
I think it's just Peter.
Anyways,
but
you know what's so much more interesting?
Yeah, my brother Pieter
is still in the void. Anyways, speaking of voids and people that are not in the void, that are very much doing really cool stuff, is none other than our first filmed guest, April Soetarman. April is awesome. She is a sister of a very good friend of mine, Sam, and she does really, really cool things. And I'm going to list some stuff, and I doubt this is going to be everything, even that she does. She has a background in architecture. She is a public artist. She is a tech worker. She is a game designer. She is a visual artist. She does immersive theater experiences. I don't know if I'm missing anything. I probably am.
As you know, this year we're talking. Hell yeah. All about hope, and I'm really excited to talk to April about her view of hope as an artist, as a multi-hyphenate, creative, super aware person living in New York, engaged in so many different things right now, and I think this is going to be a really cool conversation.
Please welcome April Soetarman.
Do you like my world domination map in the background?
Yeah, it was so is that what it okay, so you're first of all, where are you?
This isn't her typical.
No, this is not her typical thing. Her typical thing is there's a room, there's a bunch of hats behind her. But now I just see different globes. It looks like a Renaissance-esque depiction of the world. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel extremely powerful. So I'm currently in North Carolina, and this is Jay's dad's office, and it's this like massive desk, and I don't know if it's mahogany, but I feel like if I were describing it, I would say it's a mahogany desk for vibes. And it's like this bookcase and these globes and these maps, and I'm like, yeah, this is where I plan how I'm going to take over the world. Evil.
It would be better if you had, like those globes that have the alcohol inside, like the whiskey and the bourbon. Yeah. And you should be in 19th century British garb and talk about colonizing the world and screwing it over for the next
Absolutely.
centuries to go.
Nothing would give me greater joy than to do that. I will work on that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Anyways, so first of all, welcome April to the show. We do have a guest. And I'm excited for a few reasons. One is that April, you're our first guest on our official filmed version of the podcast, where we have lights, camera, and action. And you are a visual artist among the millions of other things you do. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Timmy, can you just tell us briefly how we met April?
I heard of April long before I met you. I'm very close friends with your brother, Sam, who I was just texting with half an hour ago in Ecuador. He's working for the Peace Corps, and I was like, I'm talking to your sister. It's going to be great. But the first time I met you, April, I believe it was when you were moving from Greenpoint in New York during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we shared good food in your backyard. So April, as we were saying, you do 5,000,001 things. And even as we were prepping for this, we were like, okay, oh, by the way, there's this thing I can do and this thing I can do and all these different aspects. But maybe we can start out with, I know you're working on this essay about hope versus dread. And I know it's a culmination of a lot of your work. So I'm just saying, I'm just wondering, starting from the end and then going to the beginning, what inspired this essay, and then what were the different parts that went into it?
Yeah, honestly, I think I'll have to start from the beginning just to get
start from the beginning.
Context.
Okay, great.
We'll just be normal then.
Yeah.
We got to give people context. We can't give them just spoilers and expect
Bummer. Okay.
Damn it! I was doing a Hamilton move where it's just he dies, and then going to the beginning.
But everybody knows who Hamilton is.
No one knows who April is. Okay.
Not nobody.
Not nobody. Timmy, yes.
Timmy, I thought where's the rap though to start us off?
How does an artist, tech worker,
no.
board game designer get from there to here? Anyways, I'm not going to butcher it. Anyways, start from the beginning. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, starting from the beginning. So I have a background in architecture. I worked at an architecture firm in Seattle after graduation, was part of an educational startup. But in Seattle, 2015, at the time I'd been working at this architecture firm for a while. And if you know anything about architecture takes a really long time to get finished. So it's you might work on a building and then 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7 years later, it might get built if you're lucky. There's also, you're subject to whims of clients and they change their design, they have their input. And again, it's a lot of collaboration, which is great. But again, you're external funding, external budget, external clients. So I was working in architecture, and I really wanted to be able to work on creative pieces that I could just be done with and could get out there. And also I was feeling this self-imposed pressure of being a quote professional designer, where it's your portfolio has to be your best work, and you have to just show off how good you are at design, and it has to be polished and perfect. So I actually registered the domain name WeirdSideProjects.com in March 2015, and I put up my first ever little street art piece in April 2015, a month later. Intentionally the day before my birthday. But so I think during 2015 and going on, I would just make little things. I would, I would put some letters in and make a phrase out of chocolate, or I would I made a Twitter bot that generated food themed romance novel excerpts, or I would make these street signs, which I'll show you later, that ended up taking off. But the point was, I was just making all these little things anonymously and posting them anonymously online under the name Weird Side Projects, because it kind of freed me from being self-conscious of oh, is the work good? Is the work, quote professional? Is this work how I represent myself? But then the Weird Side Projects actually ended up taking off. So I was doing all these like not sanctioned street art installations in Seattle. They ended up going viral on Tumblr back in like 2016.
I remember Tumblr.
Tumblr, I know. I mean,
Yes.
it's coming back kind of because
Cool, I didn't know that.
right? But they get it. They got popular on Tumblr. They were going viral on like meme sites. Like people thought that like the city of Minneapolis did them, and I was just like putting up installs whenever I like traveled or stuff as well. And then I ended up getting like legal commissions from the city of Seattle and did like a Kickstarter for the city of Seattle was like, hey, we can pay you to do this.
Amazing.
So cool.
One of the things I was very careful of when putting up work in public is anybody can stumble across it, right? And it kind of came from someone was like, they were joking. This was in the architecture firm. They were joking about some project. And they're like, oh, what if we just put the F word up really big? And I was like, that's also like, that's not clever either.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think about something like in public, anybody can stumble across. And so I think some works I've made have been a little more irreverent or a little kind of like skirting the line of like, oh, haha, this might make somebody feel bad. I was very careful. Like that's never public work. And this idea of like, I define delight as that intersection of positive and unexpected. And so I never want you to like I would want you to come across things that are like delightful in public because it's like rewarding you for like being in your like walking around your city and enjoying the space. And I would never want you to just like make you feel bad for doing that. So for example, one of these signs, I think I did 2016, perhaps this one, it says, attention, you are wonderful and deserve every happiness. And these are legit aluminum street signs that like last forever outside. And so I like, these are some of the ones that I would like, again, just like put up in parks in Seattle, and they'd eventually get stolen. And that's kind of just what happens when you do public street art.
How long did it take to get stolen?
That one, I think the street signs get stolen much easy, like just they're easier to get because I just put like zip ties. Mm-hmm. But I did these other ones that say these are on push buttons, like so crosswalk push buttons. And I did those with vinyl stickers that I made. And it's like this outdoor vinyl that's for exterior weatherproofing use, stuff like that. And they say like push to forget or push to remember. And those ones have been up for like 5 years in Seattle. So it's like
Wow.
there's a little intersection. So, and there's some they say like push for clarity or like push for luck or stuff like that. So those ones last a lot longer because it's harder to remove. So, but yeah, that's kind of like in public. Yeah, I wouldn't want so that's about like putting it out there and like out of a gallery space or out of a space where you expect to see art and being like, oh, I'm just like, again, being in the city. I still keep the name Weird Side Projects because I still release things under, but I stopped being anonymous with it as well. One other reason I started Weird Side Projects is people kept on spelling my last name wrong. It's Soetarman. It's spelled wrong all the time. So that was another reason. But I still keep that name, but it's like I do now release my like longer form writing and installation and immersive theater under like my name because it's like this is my work and versus Weird Side Project is kind of like another brand almost like.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How is it, since you said that it was freeing originally to not use your real name, do you kind of feel more constricted now that you're not anonymous anymore?
I think also part of the reason why I stopped being anonymous is people really, really liked it and they thought I was a white man. So let's take the credit. Like I want the credit where credit's due for this.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think I do appreciate the name Weird Side Projects because it lowers the bar for like these are weird side projects and they never have to be amazing. But then it again turns out people really, really liked them. So sometimes I have to manage like, oh yeah, I was the person who also did this thing, but I did it under the name Weird Side Project. It's like a weird like social media or like branding or like SEO thing too.
Right. Yeah.
It's really interesting though when you're talking about commanding attention with your name and without it. And I mean, it sounds for you there's like other dimensions around around people confusing you. It's like saying, oh, we're assuming you're a white guy. One thing that it just made me think of is this is nowhere near the scale of what you're doing. My friend Nick and I, we travel around the world with a duck named Patti. And Abbie, yeah, you're rolling your eyes. Abbie is his number one worst enemy, but it's a
I
duck
can't
that we travel
stand
around
this
with.
duck. It's so
How big is this duck? Like rubber duck?
I
Big
can
model duck?
get it. I can get it because now we're doing film.
God, this is great.
One
Or
second.
episode 1 of video, and already Patty's making an appearance.
It's a big duck.
It's a
Okay.
big duck.
Yeah, it's a
And-
duck-sized duck.
Did you know, Abbie, that Patti would be featured on our first film
True.
episode? So this is Patti, and he travels the world, and he just gives like nice quotes and has nice views. But there's something that you're allowed to do with the plastic duck and ways that people interact with it that would be different if I just did the photo, or there's the only way I'm relating to this is with the idea of anonymity.
Mm.
Where like people like interacting with an artifact, and people do things differently than if it's with a person doing the performing.
Yes.
So I'm interested that you like go through both of those worlds of just saying this is where your name is and this is also where it's not.
Speaking of like physical artifacts, I've had people, when I show them photos of these signs or this or whatever, they'd be like, "Oh, is that photoshopped?" I'm like, no, the whole point is it's real and it's in the world and you can find it. Like, I will say probably maybe the majority of people may see it on the internet or something like that. But for me, it's important that it is a real thing that exists in the world. And it wasn't just like, I didn't just like put it up and take it out. And it wasn't just like a Photoshop thing. It was like, it was there for however long it got to exist. And
yeah. And something that I'm also really interested by what you're saying is that it sounds like you were really intentional about how you were making people feel. You didn't just put like a big sign saying fuck on a billboard. And I'm just wondering like how do, like, with that responsibility of attention, like how did you want people to feel? I know you mentioned the word delight and that definition of that, but just how did you think about that?
yeah, I think again, like the responsibility of like putting things in public is like, especially because like some of the push buttons, I think there's a push, I made a push for stability, push for freedom one. So again, it's an intersection, it's push for stability or freedom. And I know a lot of people definitely felt conflicted about that. They're like, oh, I want both, or like they were very clear they wanted one or the other, led to some discussion. Yeah, there was push for luck, I think the push buttons were kind of straddling the line where it's like, they're not all just saying push for luck, and they're definitely not saying push for happiness or something like that, because that's not, I think it's
Wait,
kind
that's
of
not what?
That's not something, I think that's too trite, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, no, good. I think there's something about like this attention one, like you are wonderful and deserve every happiness. This one actually was really, I didn't want it to say like be happy or like you deserve to be happy or something like that. I think I was really clear that it was like you deserve every happiness. Or so I think I'm maybe perhaps not, I'm definitely thinking a lot about the nuances of the wording. So it's not saying like you be happy or smile or things like that. Right. I really hate ones that are like telling me to like, oh, things are bad, just count your blessings, just be grateful. I'm like, oh, don't tell me that. Like without it. Acknowledging that people might come across it they might be in a very different emotional state, or they might be like coming from a different place, and they might not want something that just tells you to like be happy.
It's funny. This reminds me, I hadn't thought about this in a couple of years. There was just like setting the scene. This was deep, dark COVID times. Like this was spring 2020. And I'd spent a couple months in lockdown. And then I got a in-person gig that it was in Burbank, in LA. And it was just like a weird time. Like it was a stressful job. Everyone was like really masked. I was super lonely. The job was hard. Anyway, lots of emotions. And there was a tiny little park nearby. So during my lunches, I would just like walk to the park and eat lunch outside in the park. And there was a sign because everything's deserted. Everyone was still inside. So it was like super hot, no one around. And there was a sign. It was one of those attention signs. I have it in front of me, so I took a picture of it. Take note of what it feels like to be alive right now. And that was the sign. And like, I found that sign so moving, and I would go visit it every single day and like sit in front of it. And like, it wasn't like you were saying, it wasn't just like, be happy. It was like, take note of what it feels like to be alive right now. And like me taking note of what it felt like to be alive at that moment was like real sad and really scared and really overwhelmed. But like I don't know, because it was framed as a literal sign, like I was like, okay, I have to pay attention. I have to do this thing. And it became this like really important ritual that I did every day for a month. And I don't know who put that there. I don't think it was the city, but it became like a really important, like meditative thing for me. So stuff like that's really important, and it can really change the way people think. And I don't know, that's really cool that you do stuff like that.
I love
That's
that one
awesome.
because it's also like an invitation, right? Like I'm not just
Yeah.
commanding. And that's something about the anonymous work too, because before I didn't have any tags or anything. At one point I tried putting up like a secret phone number. Nobody dialed it. But there's something about like, I think and this is probably to the detriment of like sales or branding or whatever bullshit, all that stuff, but it's not about me, the person. Like if I was like, oh, here's the site and here's my handle really, really big, and we're like, here's my thing, or here's how you can follow me, then all of a sudden it becomes about like, look at me, I'm the person who's like giving you this thing and like doing this thing for you. So that it is kind of a weird, like, but also wonderful, I think, on the part of the person who stumbles across it, is they're like who you don't know who did it, but it's like it's out there in the space, and it's not about that individual artist anymore.
Right.
Though I would love to know who did that sign.
I know, I would too. I want to thank them real bad.
I have a question running through my head hearing you two talk about, I mean, Abbie, with your sign experience, and April with all your projects, is just like, how do we have more of this type of attention more commonplace, where the value isn't how much money you make, like on Instagram with ads or for some particular cause, but for literally just making like an invitation to notice, to be mindful, to make the world a better place to live in. How can we make that like an actual currency, or actual value behind some of the artwork that we do? Because it just seems that our world is so focused on attention that's monetized, and from news to Instagram to all sorts of social media to every billboard most every billboard you see, and just like what needs to change in order to have more of the type of attention of making your life better that you two are talking about. It's just, I wish there was more of it.
I guess I could go into a piece that I did during the pandemic that was also anonymously installed. So this was in 2020. I made this piece in fall of 2020. It was called The End of the Day, and it's a public audio installation that only be played at sunset. So it's a series of these little engraved brass plaques. I don't have any on me right now, but it's an engraved brass plaque, like the kind you see on a park bench, and it says, "The end of the day, there's a local phone number, make yourself comfortable, call it sunset." Yeah, I'll preface with, like, they were installed in public spaces, originally in New York, on benches facing the water. So they would always be like on a bench, sunset. So if you come across these parks, you're in a park at sunset and you come across this little plaque and you decide to, like, you don't know what it is, but you decide to take a chance and call this number. You actually get this like 10-minute audio play about a moment many, many years from now when you're looking back and reflecting on a life well lived. Like someday in the future when you are like sitting and watching the sunset many, many years from now, and it's about like reclaiming a good future as like a brave and hopeful act. So yeah, it's a 10-minute play. It tells you right off the bat in the beginning, it's like, at the end of the day, this is the tone is quiet, contemplative, and hopeful, and it's 10 minutes. And so you kind of, in the preface before the piece starts, I do like let you know what you're getting into. So, now that you've like taken a chance and called this number. And so yeah, it's a guided audio experience about like the good moments in your life so far, and those that are like yet to come. And so I installed it on a bunch of places in New York on the day before the 2020 election. I did have a lot of people like play test it ahead of time on Zoom, but it's not signed. There's nothing else. Yeah, there's no like marker of like who I am. Like it doesn't have my name or tag or anything like that. But they're just, again, on these like public spaces across the city. And eventually like hundreds of people ended up doing this. Like it got picked up in press and like,
Wow.
like it got like a best of award for like immersive experiences 2020 stuff.
Man,
like
congratulations.
That. Thank you. I was like, not that the awards matter, but I was not expecting an audience for this. Like I didn't do it with intention. I was like, okay, I have this thing that like from the play test, people were like, oh, it made them feel more centered, it made them feel calmer, they felt better, because it was especially in like fall 2020, like if you remember, the news was like so relentless, like every single day we're like, what the is happening, right? So it was like kind of like changing the time horizon and being like, okay, how if we zoom out, and if you like again look at your life as a whole, and it wasn't trying to be like you should feel hopeful or feel better, or like humanity is like, you know, the best it's been in the history of the world. I hate those when people are like, well, look at the trajectory of humanity, and you're like, it still sucks right now. But it was kind of like, at least for this time frame, it did, a lot of people said it helped them again feel focused, centered, like personally hopeful, or just feel better. And I know like especially during COVID, like couples would go to it together, like on date nights or things like that. And this is what they've told me, like the people who like ended up tracking me down and like sending an email. Yeah, couples went through date nights, and like, or people did it by themselves, or they did it with family members or other people in their bubble. But it was like, just put it out there, and then yeah, it ended up finding a bigger audience afterwards. But it was again, like I will say, on the funding and the mechanics side of it, it did end up getting funded by another theater company later, and we got to reinstall it, and we did in like LA, and like I put some up in Seattle and like New York. So on the logistics side of that is like, well, it did help to get funding too, and institutional support for like making a piece like that. But, yeah.
Yeah, that always helps, because that's the way that the world works. What I love about that example, and I think it ties so well in with, with Project Spiral's theme of hope this year, is that you didn't just make an installation where it just made people feel good in a second, but just it was allowing people to hope in a future, as opposed to fearing what's to come. And having that being an expectation, and it doesn't seem like you were ignoring the present COVID realities or the present troubles that people were dealing with, but you were giving some people an opportunity to see a different, better future that didn't involve just fear. And I love that. I wish we could do more of that, where it's not just saying be happy, but just saying, can you imagine a world where you're thanking yourself now for what you're trying to do and what you're currently doing. And I love that perspective. That just seems like so much of a more authentic sense of hope. Yeah. So it's just one thing about it. It's really cool.
We'll say design wise, I also like queued it up a lot in terms of like this piece only worked if you dialed around sunset time, like at a window, and it wouldn't work if you called it like noon or in the morning. So I did kind of, to get people in this like mindset first, they're in public parks that are not too crowded. Like they are safe to be around sunset nighttime. They're accessible from transit, and also like from like sidewalk accessibility reasons too. But this idea of like, if you're in a public park at sunset, you're already a little more like slowed down and contemplative and like receptive to like, again, this like audio play, versus like you're not like going on your lunch break and rushing around and things like that. So I think it is one of those where I also use the advantage of like watching a sunset and having this location to kind of like help get prime folks to be in that right mindset to like think about these things, right? Versus like trying to catch someone on their lunch break or trying to catch someone on their phone. And also it was like, again, COVID safe outdoors, you only needed your phone. And it was like also off screens too, because I didn't want people like, we were all like zoomed out at the time, right? And we're like, I didn't want you to be like on your screen and like checking all that. So it's just like holding up your phone to your.
Yeah. I love so many things about this, but one of the things I was just thinking about when you were talking about, you know, the mental state you're in when you watch a sunset. Okay, sorry, so many ideas in my head. It really flies in the face of this idea of these like big art experiences needing to cost so much money to make, because like they, you know, yeah, of course, like marketing costs a lot, paying people for their work is really important, but there's like these intrinsic kind of natural human interactions with nature that have brought, you know, feelings of delight, of calm, of hope, like since the beginning of humanity. You know, sunrise, sunset, the stars, beautiful clouds, you know, stuff that you don't have to make at all. They're there. They like give you emotions all by itself, and you're just kind of directing people's attention to that. And I think that's so cool, because it's so big. Like there's nothing bigger than a sunset. It's everything, and like these colors. And I've never seen a sunset where it didn't make me feel something. And no one made that that's just nature. And I don't know, I think that's so cool. And if we're thinking about hope and an impact as an artist, which sometimes feels impossible, but you were able to kind of turn people's attention towards something for free, that happens every single day. And, it's usually pretty hard to get people to pay attention to it. So I think that's really cool. I love that.
Cute.
Abbie, I see you doing that in like a very different way, where it's like I'm thinking particularly about your Fuller Project work, where you focus on women around the world, sometimes very dire situations, and you make it in a way that people can like watch, learn, and do something about it. So I feel like you do that too in your own way.
Thanks.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if how you do that when you have like a very hard example, like the treatment of Yazidi women, for example, and just like how do you make that? How do you make a video where people can watch it and then feel like not feel totally in despair about it, but feel like they can do something about that? Because I feel like you do that in your own way too.
I mean, that's interesting to draw the connection. I wouldn't have thought about it like that, but thank you. I think in my work, there's so many layers to that as well, because there are such heavy topics and some really horrible things happening. I have done a lot of work about Yazidi women in Iraq, and then most recently Afghan women stuck in Kabul right now. And I think it's really hard to feel hopeful, and it's really hard to get the audience to feel motivated to do anything at the end of it. But I think, I don't know, one of the series we worked on most recently was about a group of women in Kabul and a couple other cities in Afghanistan who are actively protesting against the Taliban, and they're risking their lives to do so. And so one of the things I really liked about working on that project was because it wasn't simply like, oh my God, there are these like horrible things happening, because there are, and we did talk about it. But then look at how brave these people are who are fighting against it. And one of the refrains we had at the end of this one video was like, they're talking to you. They're trying to get your attention, like pay attention, listen to them. And that was the whole goal of that video, was just to get people to listen. And so I was hoping that audiences, having gotten to the end of the video, they would have listened because they watched the video and they felt like they were then in conversation with these people. Hopefully that meant something to somebody. I don't know. Does that answer your question too?
Yeah, it does. It's really interesting where it's just like, yeah, but again, it sounds like you're being very intentional of how, like, acknowledging pain that people are going through, but then like helping give people an avenue to do something or hope in something else, or find an action point, or imagine something else.
It's a responsibility. If you have, and I do view it as a privilege, like if you do have the privilege of capturing someone's attention for however short a time, to be able to leave them in a better spot than you found them, or at least a different spot, or maybe not a worse spot.
Yes.
It may be the same or better, but not worse. And I feel like that's like a real responsibility. And to me, when you were asking before kind of about like the price of attention and stuff, I was just thinking about the Super Bowl, because that just happened last week, and just how ridiculously expensive those, like every commercial, how many millions of dollars go into, a 15-second commercial. And so how that's like a literal monetary value on people's attention, because that's the most attention most of these brands are going to get. And just, yeah, most of them, those commercials are fine, but just what it means when you've earned the right or earned the opportunity to engage with an audience. What do you do with that opportunity? How can you make the most of it? It's a cool idea. It's hard.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's a great point. I'm wondering about you, April. A question that I had about this is like, you're doing all this amazing work for people in the world, but then like, who takes care of the artist? Like, what about you and your hope in your life? Like, who's making a sunset bench for you? So sad. But I know you've done work specifically around supporting artists, like yourself. And I'm just that was just a question.
I enjoy other people's art, so I think.
Yeah.
That like feeds the moment you go to like a show and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like rewired my brain, changed my life. Yeah, I think this isn't a full thought, but thinking about when people are like, when I think about like positive and unexpected, or like if we're looking at like negative and positive, or like emotional, like what evokes emotion, like positive doesn't always mean happy, right? Positive could be like, it's like a positive can be like a good cry is positive, like, or like being able to tap into something that you weren't able to just tap into before, like feeling like the entirety of a feeling, even if that feeling is like a rough feeling. Like I think that's good. And especially Abby, thinking about what you said, like everybody just wants to be like seen and remembered at the end of the day, kind of, right? Like, and there's definitely the ego version of being like seen and remembered. You're like, oh, I want the masses, or I want crowds, or whatever. But I think there's definitely the beautiful like quiet moments, and like the people you care about, or the people you haven't met, or like people who maybe have seen something that you've made, and like help them tap into that feeling as well. So that's I don't know, just thinking about that. But yeah, I mean, I also, it's nice to like take a break from art stuff too, to not just be in that headspace all the time. It's like I'm gonna go like read a book, walk my dog, cook some food. But yeah, what you said about like, it's kind of funny that like when I make this piece for someone else, it actually doesn't quite like work on, well, because I don't get to experience it from that end, like, because I'm doing it from the creator end. I actually did this other piece back in 2017. I did build as a coping mechanism. But it's funny because, like, again, a lot of the stuff I built is like, I'm building the stuff I want to exist for me. Like, I think the first priority is making sure I like what I make first. Because it's like, I'm not, especially for some of these other ones, it's like, it's not like a design project. It's not like a design contract where I'm like, oh, I'm doing a deliverable for a client, or I'm doing something that is like, no, I need this thing and I want it to exist. And now I'm going to share it. But like, I want to make sure that I like it and I'm happy with it.
Sure.
And like, it fills my soul in that way, like in the act of making, versus like someone else maybe gets to experience it. And that's a different experience. But like, I do get a lot from the act of making. Like, I do enjoy it. So I think that fills me, like that feels good in other ways. Okay, so I did this piece back in 2017 called The Museum of Almost Realities. And so this was like an installation piece that I did that was about a collection of artifacts from the life you might have had. So I guess I can walk you through. So at the beginning, you are you're greeted by a docent. The docent was me. You get a little museum guide to ask you for a name. Feel free to browse through, take a look as much as you want. There'll be something waiting for you at the end. And so there's a bunch of artifacts on the wall, like everyday artifacts, but like placed on like pedestals, or like framed really beautifully, or like plinths, and like in this like museum setting.
Where did you do this?
Oh, it was in New York for a weekend, and then I was able to tour. It was in the Seattle Art Museum for one night, and then it was in Chicago for a couple days as well. But the first iteration, this was in New York. Some of these artifacts were like, one was like license plate, June 2015. This is the license plate of the car that didn't hit you. The driver saw you and got out. The driver saw you in time. You bike by unawares. Or there's like a set of like keys, apartment keys, and there's 3 different captions depending on where you're standing. And it's like 3 different lines, like you chose to, go to Boston for love, or New York for a career, or stayed in California. So kind of just again, like all these captions written about second person of like events that happened in this almost reality. And the whole piece is kind of based on 3 concepts. Like the first being like objects hold memory. And then like that's why we have like souvenirs, mementos, things like that. And the second is this quote I heard once, and I can't find who did it anymore. I tried Googling, I haven't been able to find it. But this quote that's like, for every choice you make, you kill off a possible future. Sometimes you have to live with their ghosts. Right. And third being, you only put important objects in a museum once they're no longer in use. Right, like so again, it's this collection of artifacts from this life you might have had. But then towards the end, there's actually like a little contributions area, and it says like, your contributions help keep the museum running. Artifacts will be valued, protected, and maintained. They will be here whenever you decide to return, but you no longer have to carry them with you day to day. And we only accept artifacts that are no longer active use. Please do not donate any realities you're currently holding on to. And then acceptable contributions are like fleeting moments, regrets, what ifs, missed opportunities, or money. So this is towards the end of the piece. And then so you can contribute. So a lot of people would actually contribute like things they like. Some people contributed things they had with them. Other people, like there's a little notepad you can like write down these contributions. But at the end, I actually gave you this little receipt of your own almost reality, and they were personalized because I got your name at the very beginning. So it'd be like, this is Tim in an almost reality. And it'll say, you get your PhD in English literature and you teach at a university in Chicago. You meet the love of your life at a house party. You never run late, and you never move to New York or something like that. And then don't forget to eat breakfast tomorrow. So these were procedurally generated. So I kind of wrote like 20 different things. Like there was always something about job, something about love, something nice about that life. So like you never run late, and then something a little sad, and then a piece of advice. And so I wrote like 20 different versions for each bucket, and then you kind of got like a randomizer like got that, but they were like personalized with your name on this like little receipt piece. And so yeah, that was kind of like people went through this like installation piece again, seeing all these like physical artifacts. But yeah, this was, I actually wrote first for myself as a coping mechanism, because I actually did get hit by a car in like, you know, in 2015, and like, or like other things where I was like, ooh, I wish I had this. And it was, the idea though of the museum is like you go through the museum, but you close the doors and then you leave. Like you don't live there. It's not a house of almost realities, right? It's like, it's acknowledging that sometimes you do think about these things. Like there's on the web version of this, I have almostrealities.org. It says like under admissions, it's like it closes at like 2 a.m. or something, 4 a.m. because like that's when you're like lying in bed thinking about it, right? But it's like I do want to acknowledge that it's like, oh, I should hope that like, or not hope, but it's like everybody does kind of think about these things, I think, to a certain extent. But again, the idea is like you put them in the museum and then you close the door and you leave and you go on and you live your life. So yeah, that was a piece that I wrote for myself as a first, like, and then I made it like a physical installation. Like I made a logo that like changes every time, and then and there's like a whole like you know, other like world building part of it. But that was something, again, if you asked about like who's doing it for me, it was like, well, I needed it for myself, so I built it, right? Yeah.
What that okay, that project's so cool. I want to go through that exhibit, and it's really interesting because what you're saying is different, a little different from actually what our last episode with Anna Zoe Hare. She talks about like hope in the future you have, where she's just like saying like it's not worth like if you're going to keep hoping for a world that's not going to go above 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees, like it's like that may not be the most worthwhile thing. How do you hope in a reality that you're in, and how do you accept current reality? And you're saying that too, and you're also saying that like you acknowledge also what could have been, and like each choice that we make like is really important, and going through that and just saying that and allowing it to have a place for it that's not in your current reality, I think is so important, and an acknowledgement. Like it also reminds me, Abbie, of how we were having a conversation about lives we could have lived, and Abbie could have been, it was like 1 inch away from being like a Renaissance fair woman, like girl. Yeah, like very like turkey drumstick in one hand, and
that could have been my personality,
and
like,
mead
I was a half
in the
step
other
away from that.
And you said I could have been a frat boy, but no, that's not that's a whole different thing. But just saying the choices that you make, the way that you did the path that you did for a reason, but also acknowledging the path that you didn't, I think is a great way of just.
It's like sorry, I interrupted.
Go.
It's like the Sylvia Plath quote about the figs, you know?
Yeah.
No, what's this quote?
Glad you asked.
I don't know.
It's not entirely the same, but it's close to it. It's a beautiful.
The fig tree one is definitely in a downer way, though. Like
yeah, it's a downer. Is it downer?
In terms of like, she's so struck by all her indecision, she makes no choice, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the quote. Yeah, it's a downer one. Okay, this is. Dear Sylvia, I saw my life branching out before me like the green fig tree in the story. From the tip of every branch, like a fat purple fig, a wonderful future beckoned and winked. One fig was a husband and a happy home and children, and another fig was a famous poet, and another fig was a brilliant professor, and another fig was E.G., the amazing editor, and another fig was Europe and Africa and South America, and another fig was Constantine and Socrates and Attila, and a pack of other lovers with queer names and offbeat professions, and another fig was an Olympic lady crew champion, and beyond and above these figs were many more figs I couldn't quite make out. I saw myself sitting in the crotch of this fig tree, starving to death, just because I couldn't make up my mind about which the figs I would choose. I wanted each and every one of them, but choosing one meant losing all the rest. And as I sat there, unable to decide, the figs began to wrinkle and go black, and one by one they plopped to the ground at my feet.
Yeah, I was like, that's not a way to live a life. I love this quote, but I'm like, that's not a way to live a life, you know? Like,
Slightly different energy.
I think part of the reason, like, one of the things that I built for myself into the museum, because there's like two different experiences of the museum. There's one that like the average participant goes through, and then there's the one, and then it's kind of funny, there's a version that people who personally know me have, because they're like, oh, this is April's life, and I'm like, versus like, if you don't know me, you put yourself into the narrative, right?
Gotcha.
And then there's a version that I have, right, because I'm the creator and also I'm designing, orchestrating everything. But I think for me, at least, there's a part where it's like, now the framework I have is like, okay, I want to make decisions that don't end up in the museum, right?
Okay.
Like,
Wow. Okay.
like when you're like, is this going to be an almost reality? It's like, do the harder one, or do the braver one, or do the one that's not going to now end up as an immortalized regret, right?
Huh.
Yeah. So that's kind of, and then also after a while, also things like cycle out. Like you're like, oh, this is a thing that like this happened a year ago, and now it's, and after a while you're like, okay, now it goes in the storage room of the Museum of Almost Realities, right? Because it's not that important.
My personal theme for this year is to
Oh, right.
make interesting choices. That's my only theme and my only goal, because an interesting being like what I define as interesting, not what might be interesting to other people, but choices that I'm like, oh, okay, that was it. Okay, Abbie, thank you. That was it. I am interested in what I just did.
Yeah.
Like, that's my, instead of just making boring, safe choices. So that's, anyway, it's kind of like a similar thing. Yeah.
I'm all about like main character energy.
Yeah.
At least for yourself. Exactly. There's definitely like the, you know, like you are a side character in someone else's story. You should be aware of your impact. But like for yourself, you should make main character choices. So
right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay. There's so many other things we have to talk about. There's
2 more wings in the museum too, if you want to hear about that.
Yes.
Please.
Okay. Yes.
Do you want to hold your thought? Okay.
Yeah, I have it in my mind.
Okay. So yeah, this was a piece because like multiple people have had, again, like visibly cried in this piece. So there's kind of this idea where it's like, oh yeah, when I'm trying to add like, again, there's a discomfort or like attention, or like I've gotten emails from it like years later that people are like, I went through this you know, this piece, and 2 years later I still think about it. But there's like, that's kind of why at the end there's like an exchange and a release. Also, so in the beginning, again, I asked for your name, and at the end there's like a part where I've given you a chance to now contribute. So it's like, you can now leave this thing behind, and then I like honor that gift and this like exchange we had by giving this little receipt that has like your almost reality. And again, none of them are bad, right? They're just different. But yeah, there are 2 other wings, and this is why I try to keep things like tonally balanced, or like, again, if there's something that's like discomfort, there's a way of like leaving that behind as well. But when I got to show it in Seattle, I added, there's 2 other wings. One is the possible futures play area. And so this is a children's quote play area where it's like a dress up area and like things, but everything is too small because, you know, as in your adult, not everything's open to you anymore. So it's like, oh, you wanted to be an astronaut or a firefighter? Like each decision you make off like closes some doors. So it's kind of like, wow. It's definitely like try to be like, it's the total is like, oh, like, yeah, you can, this is a player for children 13 and under, or before the weight of the future starts pressing down on you. Like adults may find the possible futures play area uncomfortably small, you know, because it's like, oh yeah, you think you had all these possibilities. Like it had even these little like coloring sheets that said like, when I was a kid, I someday wanted to be a blank. Now that I'm grown, I'm a blank. And people would write like, oh, I wanted to be a basketball player. Now I'm an accountant. And it was like in crayon and things like that. So it was kind of like, like, you know, but I think as the flip side of that piece, because it's kind of like doubling down on the like, oh, you were a kid and you could do anything, and now you're adult, you can't. The flip side, or again, the tonal counterpoint to that wing was the Library of Future Happiness. So it's this idea where you think that you're like, oh, this job, relationship, situation, whatever is going to be the thing that makes me happy. And we sometimes have a narrow view of like what could make you happy in the future. It's this idea of this library that has all these like probable future happinesses, like these things that you haven't even considered may make you happy in the future. Like there's a book that's like her favorite bedtime story you read every night, and it's like, is that a daughter, is that a niece, is that a friend's kid? You don't know, but it's like this idea of like you will be reading this bedtime story to this little girl and you will be happy and you will find this specific happiness. So it's like, again, like considering that like there are many possible things that may make you happy in the future that you haven't even considered. So yeah, it's like a research library, though. You're not allowed to take things with you.
Timmy, I'm curious, if you went through this museum and you had to leave something behind, even if it's just like a written thought, what would you leave?
Ooh. I know. There was one. I'm studying because I'm just like, how much do I share?
It's a very personal question.
There was one person I had a falling out with regarding talking about Israel and Palestine. There could have been different choices. Maybe the outcome would have been the same, but where it was the end of a friendship that meant something to me. But I think I would have. I don't know what the written piece would be. Maybe it would be a letter to him or a script of how a conversation could have gone the way I wanted it to. And it won't happen whenever that ship has sailed. Yeah, I think it would have been nice to. I think it still could be nice to acknowledge that reality, let it float its own way, and then continue in the world that I live in, and the intentional choices that I make. But it's a good question. It's hard. It's hard for sure. Yeah.
I'm just curious.
What about you?
Come on.
Yeah, come on. You can't subject me to this torture.
Good question.
That you asked.
I know. Well, technically, I guess April asked it.
Technically, April asked it. Yeah, she has the origin.
I just left it open.
I guess. Okay, I think it would be a like a little like corporate little plaque thing that's like 10 years at NBC type thing, because I worked at NBC for a while, and I kind of reached a point because it was a good gig and it was like related to what I wanted to be doing, but it didn't feel right to me. I didn't think I was working on stuff that mattered the way I wanted it to. And so I made the decision to leave and start my own company. And it was a really hard decision. And part of the thing that like really pushed me over the edge was like one day I was walking through the lot at Universal and there was a big party going on in the commissary. And it was everyone who had been at NBC Universal for 30 years. They were celebrating them. And my brain just crashed because I was like, oh my God, like there's obviously not anything wrong in staying with a company for that long. And I hope they have had fulfilling careers, but I'm like, I just cannot 30 years from now be in the same place, making the same stuff. I can't do that. And that's one of the things that pushed me kind of over the edge of making the decision to leave. But I feel like what could have been would be like me thriving in this corporate environment, maybe having a much more stable life with my little 10-year memorabilia thing.
I have one in the museum. I don't know if I can find it in time, but there is one about office mug or something where you stay at it like day after day.
Yeah.
And it's like it ends with like stability is worth the cost of freedom or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, where it's like you just stay and to again acknowledge that you're like thinking like, well, what if I had and at least where I am and right now I could never have seen myself staying at the time that was a job even earlier in like 2013. But I think acknowledging that it's like, oh yeah, it's there. It is a choice that you made, right? Yeah.
And the pride associated with that, I think, like, especially those things of I've been here for a long time, I'm being honored for my contribution, whatever that is, there is pride in that, but having given up that path and that validation is really interesting. Okay, so God, we're already at an hour. How is this happening?
I was like, I haven't even gone to the board games.
I want to hear about your board game. I'm very curious. Please tell us all about
Yes.
this cool project.
Okay, so now that you've heard a lot of like the conceptual work I've done, so right now I am currently developing a board game about being a working artist under capitalism. Because we've talked a little bit about like what helps make art possible, right? And it not just like there's the funding perspective and there's also like the external support perspective, but there's also like again the health of the artist and like art. How are you feeling? Are you feeling fearful? Are you feeling hopeful? Are you feeling like your work matters? Are you feeling like you have an audience? All of that, because I think something that came up around like after the election, people were like, well, your favorite artist will still be making art, and I was like so mad at that because I was like, well, what if your favorite artist is really upset and doesn't feel like making art right now? But yeah, so right now the board game, it's at the moment called the Working Artist Board Game. And it's about balancing the beauty and joy of like making art and how it connects you with yourself and the world and other people versus having to leverage your creative practice as a commodity to survive under capitalism and how that like changes the relationship. Because it's like, if you have art as a hobby, that is wonderful. That is great. If you just do it for yourself, that is such a beautiful thing to do. But again, when you start having to rely on it for money, it's a different relationship. Or again, rely on your creativity for money. And that starts getting into like brand and eyeballs and acknowledgement and like having as many people see it. So the basic mechanics are the game are of each player is tracking prestige, money, morale, and artworks. Okay. I do want to qualify prestige is external markers of success, but also does mean like reach, right? There are 2 tracks on the board. The inner track is for making art. So the cards and such are related to like creative flow, creative block, research, experimentation. You finish that track, you get 1 artwork and 2 morale. Outer track is external art business. So like publicizing, promoting, day job, applying for grants, institutional legitimacy. So it's opportunities for money and prestige. No matter which, or selling your work even too. No matter which track you do, you always have to pay rent, which is 1 money. Okay, so you pick your track. If you run out of morale or money, you lose automatically. So either you stopped believing in yourself or you ran out of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in the beginning, though, of the game, you can actually choose your own success or win condition. So if you're like, do I want to be rich as an artist, famous as an artist, or just focus on my practice? And these are like different numerical presets. You can't ignore any one of these though, because again, like you need the money to keep playing the game. You need the prestige to get an audience and also find people who connect with your work. And you need the artwork to actually have work to show, right? And morale is what keeps you going. So some of the cards I have on the outer track. So yeah, outer track has like the spaces on the board are like things you can kind of rely on. Like one of them is like friend of a friend's basement show. And it's like, it gives you 1 morale. It's like you feel better. It doesn't give you any money or anything, but it's like you feel better doing it. And then there's also like institutions you can look for, like, oh, if you want prestigious gallery show or have this, production here, you do know, even from the outside, you kind of know it's like, oh, I do need a certain level of prestige and a certain level of artworks to be able to like potentially get this thing. But see, some of the opportunity cards on the outer track are this one that says comparison is a thief of joy. Look around, for every player with higher prestige than you, lose 1 morale. These ones,
these are so well done.
Thank you. There's one around the algorithm changes, so you lose 1 prestige and 1 morale. And to go along with that, there's the platform dissolves, so you lose half of your existing prestige, and you can like roll to try to get some of it back. They're not.
I don't think Abbie relates to this at all. I think she finds no tie-in whatsoever. She hides behind her mic.
They're not all bad, just the bad ones are funnier. So like I'll read you like 2 more. Like there's one where you get like fan mail. You get like a very nice email from like how much your work means to somebody. That's morale, or like your work you're on trend, your aesthetic suddenly becomes popular and then you can sell for a higher price. There's a card for redefining success, so you can actually change your success condition. One more I'll read you. There's a crisis of faith. What is the point of making art on a swiftly burning planet? Roll your 3 to snap yourself out of it, or else you lose morale. Again, they're not all bad, but the bad ones are funnier.
Yeah.
So in the inner art making track, if you roll doubles in your die, with your dice, you get this little token that says a fleeting moment of transcendence. I have a couple different designs right now, but yeah, fleeting moment of transcendence.
I haven't seen these yet because I saw you showed me this in your apartment, but I haven't seen the tokens yet.
Yeah. So there's a couple different designs. I really like this clear one. It's just hard to read. So you get this token, and it gives you no stats. It doesn't give you any money. It doesn't give you morale. It doesn't give you prestige artworks. But it saves you if your morale ever goes to 0. So, and you can have like a big stack of them, and they're very satisfying to like play with. Also, that's on purpose.
Abbie's mind is blown.
It saves you if your morale ever goes to 0. So yeah, there's a lot of like, I try to build in like emotional checks and balances into the game, so it's not just like, well, this is hard or this is rougher. But yeah, that's kind of where it is right now.
Oh my god. Okay. Wow, that's good. It's good. One of the things I love is that like if you lose morale, then you lose or you're out of the game. Because I feel like if we're in my head, morale is very similar to hope, and so if you lose hope, then you're done. Which I feel like is very similar to what we talked about with Zoe, as like hope being a like biological evolutionary trait that humanity has developed in order to survive difficult situations. And I feel like it's the same as a working artist, that if you do not have morale, if you do not have hope that you can succeed, then you're done.
Yeah, the work ends. It's like how she talks about how like the opposite of hope is hopelessness. And if you're hopelessness, why do anything if there's nothing to shoot for?
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's fascinating. I'm curious, what is your hope for this game? Do you want it to do you want to sell it? Do you want people just to play it? Like, what is your goal?
Yeah, so kind of like the meta part of the game right now is like applying for institutional support. So it's like, because like it's a lot of work to make this thing. The money is part of it because I was on the short list for a really big grant. It was like a 9-month process. Unfortunately, did not get it. It was like it's kind of a mixed feeling. It's like, oh, this is encouragement that like institutions are kind of interested, but ultimately we'll see. We'll keep on going. I do have a local art residency right now to help keep on working. I think it'll definitely like be more in progress for sure. It's not going to be done by the time of this residency ends. I do have a playtest sign up list if you're interested in playtesting. There's like a little survey for folks, basically, because again, I'm also trying to get off the platforms and the algorithms and social media. It's like an email list. So I just send out like one little email where I actually share a lot more like in progress thoughts and like what I'm working with. And I will be hosting New York in-person play tests. So
yes, we will absolutely blast that.
Yeah, that's kind of where right now it's just like working through a lot of the mechanics. Yeah, I would love to do like a bigger release. I would love to. It is kind of a funny piece though, because it's not quite commercial enough to be like a traditional board game. Like this is a conceptual art piece in the form of a board game, and that I'd like definitely look at like different ways of getting support and funding. I mean, there's always like the crowdfunding route like down the line, but that there's still a lot of work to be done before then. I have this idea of like, oh, there's like the version you buy that you could just play, and that's great, and then there's like a special edition museum version that's like thousands of dollars, and they put it under a glass case and like it never gets played.
Whoa.
Wow.
Or something like that.
So funny how your reality of promoting the game is so similar to the game itself.
Yeah,
it seems like
so
it's like you can make a movie out of it.
Yeah,
but it's I find that really ironic. But
April, can we be friends?
we're already friends. We can be better friends though.
Yay!
We can hang out more often.
You're so cool. No, I'm working on a board game as well, and I'm not as far along as you are, but I
still very good.
I would love to ask you questions and compare notes. That'd be really cool.
I hope the different versions of it come. I was thinking your limited edition can go in Abbie's world domination room, next to the globe with the bourbon. Yeah, and just be like, excuse me, have a glass of bourbon and play this struggling artist game.
The gold versions of the little tokens or something. They'll be like heavy and yeah.
Platinum edition.
You can pretend to be a struggling artist.
It's like, plebeians, this is how they do it. Oh, you're the
Yeah.
inner tracker outer. I don't know
Yes,
the difference. But
it's the colonial version where you're just like, let's keep the artists in this cycle of like self-despair
You
so
know,
they don't actually like rise above it and like inspire anybody.
so there's actually a trust. There's that was the core mechanic. There's a lot more happening too, but I've made like variations where like one of them you have like starting personas, and one starting persona is like trust fund. So your rent, you don't have to pay rent. You know, so like, and then it's like, well, what choices do you make when you don't have to pay rent then, right? Like, do you just spend all your time making art? So there's definitely something also to be said. I think like everybody on this call, right, like understands, like you get it when I explain it, but it has been really interesting talking to people outside of the creative fields, and like for some they're like, oh yeah, this is why you should support art, or like, why is this person not making more work, or like, what are the like actual logistics. So I think it is like an entry point of understanding for especially folks outside of the creative field, and like, well, why is supporting living artists so important, you know, like, because you want the product.
Yeah, and that lapse is so annoying because the people who need it most aren't the ones that are greenlighting. But
also just like logistic, like there's like what perhaps like privileges or like advantages might someone have that enables them to spend more time on the work, or even just like understanding of how the game works, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a different game. You're playing kind of a different game.
Yeah. So anyways, I wish you Godspeed with that.
Thank you.
And we should probably find a way to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Can I do a social shout out, or is that a...
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Just if people can follow along with what you're doing, do the social shout out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you can find me online, April Soetarman, April Soetarman. That's .com, or also the same handle on Instagram and Blue Sky. April Soetarman. Also have Weird Side Projects. So I cross post a little on there, but that's the Weird Side Projects handle on Instagram. I have signups if you're in New York, or if you're outside of New York and you're interested. I do have signups, and again, secret sneak previews for Working Artist board game. I have a big 10th anniversary of Weird Side Projects coming up next month, and I'll probably do a release in like end of March, April. I'll have the shop open for a limited time again, but also I'm trying to make a couple just like celebratory like 10-year anniversary things as well. But yeah, we'd love to chat more.
Yay, thank you so much.
Can I ask one more?
Okay.
Sorry. I know we're so over time. And this is a big question. I'm sorry. Do you find, like, how do you keep your own morale up as a working artist? How do you keep making this stuff? I'm so impressed by how much work you can generate. And I'm just, as if you're like yourself playing the game of life, being an artist, how do you keep your own morale up? How do you keep finding hope?
Big question. I think part of, again, making the work does increase morale. Because it's like, I'm doing it because like, it's fun. It's like, there's a lot of other emotions involved. But like, I like making art. Like, I very much enjoy it. It like feels good. Like, even just like, I have fallen out of a regular journaling practice. I do want to get back into it again. But even just like, just like writing and like getting it all out. And I think it helps, like, I think, again, the process of making art, at least for me, it like helps like me like think through and process and like remember and like work, just like the act of making it does help. I think also like enjoying the work that other people do, like other creative work that people do, is great, because it like fills the well, like you're like, oh my gosh, just like seeing how other people express their creativity. But also, honestly, like in terms of like pure logistics, is like also not doing art. So I have things that are not art. So I'm not just always thinking about like, oh, I'm playing the game, playing them. Like, no, let's again, like cook some dinner, go like hang out with friends, play a completely different board game, and don't think about the mechanics too much, watch a movie. So I think doing some of those things, I think definitely like there's, and this is the harder part of the question, I think there's personal hope, and then there's like larger scale, like what is, or not, there's like personal morale, and then there's like, no, I'm looking at the horrors on my phone and I feel helpless, and it's a manufactured intentional type of helplessness, right?
To keep your eyeballs on it.
Yeah, and it's like they want you to feel bad, right? And they want you to feel like there's nothing you can do. So I think there is the part of like, what are the obviously concrete steps you can do in the areas you feel like you can make a difference, but also like doing other things that help, like art, again, making art does like help with morale. Yeah, that's such a big question. And again, I'm like
No.
always like struggling through. I'm like, oh yeah, this, and then I'm like, well, I feel bad now, so I think I gotta make a thing that will help me feel better.
One final thing that you would just said about like keep like making art and keeping perspective. Here is a painting your brother painted, right there, and you can't really
Yeah.
see it from this distance, but it's like a beautiful yellow tree with a branch that's fallen.
Yeah.
Go get it.
And
Go
I'll
get
get it.
Might as well take advantage of our video.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's so shout out to Sam Soetarman. And what I love about it is like there's this branch that's fallen and this beautiful tree, and there's things that have been outgrown, and also this amazing, beautiful growth. And I love the colors. I love everything around it. And it's just a reminder of just like be aware, like continue with the growth. And it reminds me of what you were saying about the choices of saying like what falls away, and then where do you grow? And I think art is an excellent reminder of just like make those intentional choices and keep going. Oh yeah, that just reminded what you were saying. Just reminded me of what your brother painted. Yay!
I have his painting in the other room. I have a pink tree that's over like
Cool.
there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Why don't I have a painting?
Sam, if you're hearing this, you got commissioned work coming up.
Thank you everyone so much for listening to this episode of Project Spiral. We would love it if we could invite each and every one of you to join the conversation, be part of our project.
Join
There's
us.
so many different ways. Yeah, join us, exactly. But there are so many different ways to do that. The first is connecting with us on Instagram. We are project.spiral.nyc. So come follow along for news, updates, etc. You can also message us there if you want to be on the show, if you have any questions for any of the guests, or if you want to nominate someone that you think would be really cool on the podcast. You can also email us. We still have our old email address, which is podcast, but I think Instagram is probably better for now because that's where all the branding is the same. Also, if you want to join us in person, we have our Project Spiral Lyceum events that meets in New York once a month. So message us if you want to be a part of that.
One way that you could be super helpful to us is if you enjoyed this podcast, had thoughts on it, whatever you'd like, please leave a review. That really would help us get the word out more about this podcast, and you would be very helpful. Thank you.
Don't you want to be helpful?
Don't you? April, this was such a cool conversation. Thank you so much. I know we touched on like a smidge of your work, if that's a word. And yeah, you're doing such cool things. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing this with us. Yes.
Thanks so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Yes.
I was like, there's more. We can talk even more offline.
Part 2. This has been a production of Little Scorpion Studios.